to tell a story about my mom. Now, my mother's name was Elsie Marie Ryder, R-E-I-T-E-R, Costello. Now, she was a wonderful woman in many ways, but my mother was a lousy cook. And she would burn a lot of food. And, you know, she would say, fiddle faddle, eat it. It'll curl your hair. And we ate it. And it worked. 6 out of her 7 children had curly hair. But I have to admit that there were some of these meals that she would prepare that I just could not eat. Like number 1 on my hate list was slumgunion. Yeah, the name says it all. So I'll spare you the details. And so number 2 was her stew. And I could go on and on, but it would take too long. And but she would say to me very calmly, "It's okay, you don't have to eat it, but you don't get anything else." But I thought, shoo, I escaped that torture, and I went hungry, but that was quite all right with me. And I thought, Ma, why do you keep making these things I don't like? Well, the answer is because my 3 brothers loved them. Now, I do have to say, though, is that my mother made wonderful holiday dinners. You know, Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, St. Patrick's Day, those meals were wonderful. And I am totally convinced that my mom made the best pie crust in the whole world. Now, she, as I had said, she has 7 children, and she would say, you know, to us, go out and play. You know, it's a nice day. And then if we started whining, you know, she would say, well, Mom, what are we going to do? You know, she would say, just go outside and play and use your imagination. And, but if we opt to stay in, well, then we had to read. We owned a TV, but that darn TV never seemed to go on. So we read. But she also, you know, would have us read at different points. I can tell you that one time I tried to escape going to Good Friday services at St. Agnes Catholic Church. I think I declared something like, I think I'm coming down with malaria. So she said, oh, okay. Then you stay home, get right into bed, and between the hours of 1 and 3, you read the Bible. And I'm thinking, this is not the way it was supposed to work out. And I tried to recover from malaria very quickly, but it didn't work. So, but this is the first time I did read the Bible that I experienced the peace of God. All I was doing was reading begot this, begot that, begot this, begot that, and so on. And so how I experienced that, I don't know. But I did, and it was so profound that I never forgot it. And I think I was about 8 years old. But my mother loved to crochet, she loved to read, and she loved to do crossword puzzles. And she could do the New York Times Sunday crossword puzzle like that. But she would used to sit in the dining room in the area where we had the windows, and on 3 sides she would have her papers, her books, her pens, her pencils, you know, the crossword puzzles, and then an ashtray where she would crush out her unfiltered Camels. One time I said, Mom, why do you smoke unfiltered Camel cigarettes? She said, well, because Lucky Strikes makes my throat a little scratchy. What? But she used to read to us. She would read books to us, like, let's say, The Song of the South. And she could really do an awesome Bear Rabbit. You know? And she would tell us fairy tales, you know, the same ones, Jack and the Beanstalk, Little Red Riding Hood, over and over again, and we all loved them. And she would tell us about myths and you know, King Arthur and the Round Table and things like that. But unfortunately, she never told us very much about herself. And my mother worked full-time as a nurse. She supported and loved her 7 children. And she also had to live under the fearful reign of a raging alcoholic husband. You know. But she never wavered. She never, gave up. And I never saw her cry. She was a very strong woman. And so my mother passed away when she was about 75. And she left us with a lot. I mean, we learned a great work ethic. We learned to do the right thing no matter what the cost. She taught us a love for the written word. And she also taught us to always, always honor the Lord. You know. And she was very tall, my mother. She was like 5'10", 5'11". And she used to wear these, when she got dressed up, she loved a big floppy hat. And I always thought to myself, you know those royal Brits and some of their hats, their little get-ups? They got that from my mother. But so she did teach us a lot. And she went through a lot. And one of the things, of course, that she also taught us was the idea of sacrifice, because she certainly did do that for each one of her children. So I did learn a lot from my mom, but I never learned to cook. And I can buy frozen pie crusts. And my husband said, well, if anybody needs to have the testimony to that, I'll be glad to tell them. And then when my grandchildren are over for dinner, I hear them every once in a while. Like, you know, Christopher says to Joshua, I wonder what she's going to burn today. And I say, fiddle faddle, eat 'em, because it'll just curl your hair. And it works, because they both have curly hair. So that's my mom.